I've been running this channel for a little while now, so I figured maybe we could do a little bit of a Q&A. I asked you guys on all my socials and on the YouTube channel to send me your questions, and I got a few responses. So let's go through those and I'll answer some questions for you. Miss Chambra asks, what are your top 3 favorite dice sets that you've ever made? One of the first designs I ever did was a set of Galaxy dice, and they are still one of my favorites in how they look, but also they were the set that I put up on Etsy without expecting to sell any sets, and then they sold like immediately, which kind of snowballed things. So that's got to be one of them. And then also, let's go with the lily pad dice. Before I ever got my nice molds, I had a set of really cheap, you know, like the cheap molds from Amazon, and I made a jumbo D6 that had like little lily pads in it. I did then go on to make some full sets after I had my nice molds, but I just really liked that design. I like doing little scenes inside of dice. I think that's really fun. But also that jumbo D6, I posted it on social media. That was one of the things that convinced me to actually get masters made, because it had such a good response from people. People seemed to really like it, and that just kind of boosted my confidence. And then my other favorite set of dice, and this is one that I usually go to when people ask what my favorite set of dice is, was this commission I did where every die was different and they were all bee themed. And I think some of it was just that I'm really proud of how I got all of the dice to match. Even though they're all different, I felt like they were really cohesive. And also I just like bees and I think they're cool. So it was just a fun design project. I want to go back to making some more sets like that where every die is like completely different but based on a theme. I think those are really fun. Miss Chambra also asks, how often do you remake your molds? I am very bad at estimating times on things. I try to work on making molds once a week. I don't really, just because making molds is the part that I dislike the most. I don't use my molds as much as I used to. There was a while there where I was just doing the dice stuff, but I've since gotten a part-time job, so I don't have as much time for that. I also started doing videos, so the editing of those take up quite a bit of time, so I'm actually making fewer dice than I have in the past. But let's say, I don't know, maybe like a new set, like a month maybe. I try to put it off as long as possible. I probably use my molds longer than I should. And then the third question here says, what's a dice design you dream of making but don't feel like you have the time, skill, or customer base to make? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of designs that I don't have the time for necessarily. A lot of the more complicated stuff takes a lot of time. Like, I enjoy making Minecraft D6s, but they take a long time to make, so I haven't made a lot more of those. The skill thing, there's plenty of things that I don't have the skill for yet, but the way I'm gonna get those skills is by trying things and doing them, and them being bad. That's okay. I think maybe my real answer here is one of those super like intricate, multi-layered jumbo D20s or something where there's just so many intricate details that it takes an inordinate amount of time to make it. And the only reason that I say that I might not have the time, skill, or customer base for that is that it would take a long amount of time, and that long amount of time would then translate to a very high price, which I don't know that I would be comfortable selling things at that price, and also I don't know that people would be interested in buying things at that price. And I don't know if I have the skill for that sort of stuff or not. I don't know that I have the patience for that sort of stuff. A lot of layers of resin takes a lot of days to do. I think if I really wanted to try it, I could, but it might not be very good the first time. Dave B4293 asks a question about, let me try to summarize this question a little bit. The question is asking, what can you do for inclusions that like to sink in your resin? Because if you do a layer and put the inclusion in and then pour another layer, you can usually see the line in there. I do want to start out by saying that's normal. My resin stuff does that too. I think that probably you're the only one that's going to notice or care about that. There's a lot of things in the dice and the resin and stuff that I make where I just have to go, I'm gonna notice this, and I'm gonna think it's a problem, and no one else is gonna notice this or think that it's a problem. And I think that's one of those cases. But also, if you wanna try to avoid that, I've found it useful to add other things into the resin. So say I have, I don't know, a seashell that I wanna put in the middle of the die because it's kind of heavy. I might add moss or something to the bottom and put the seashell on top of it, and that will help hold it in the middle. You can also make little structures out of UV resin to kind of prop things up. I will say that that has pretty much the same issue where you can kind of see faint lines of where the structure is, but if you're okay with that, but not okay with like the line in the dye, that could be an option. But yeah, I don't think you need to be too worried about it, honestly. I think that that's pretty normal, and most people aren't going to notice it. All right, Rat Zodiac on YouTube asks, how do you market your dice? That is a very broad question. I have a YouTube channel. Okay, I think some of this is going to be tied to the other questions here. So let me go through all the questions. Rat Zodiac asks, how do you market your dice? Have you sold dice at conventions, and what do you do to prepare for that? And what platform do you have the most success with or reach with dice making and selling? To start out, I didn't have any marketing. I just put some sets of dice up on Etsy. One of the nice things about Etsy was it had a built-in user base. People go there to look for handmade goods. I didn't really have to do much of anything. I just, put things up in my shop and then people search for things there. I've moved away from Etsy. I will talk about that in a second. There's that. You can join some sort of website that has a built-in user base. Social media. I used to try and post like 3 times a week. I now post like once a week to social media. I have found that I tend to get more sales when I am adding new stuff to the shop. So there's something to be said for that. Maybe don't put, 50 sets of dice in your shop all at once. Maybe do like 10 at a time once a month. People are going to be more interested to check out the new stuff as opposed to all of the stuff all at once. YouTube is actually a form of marketing. Sorry guys, I'm marketing to you. But this is a way to get your name out there and show people what you're working on and what you're making. Give people a sense that what you're making is legit. And I do go to like conventions and stuff too. That is a way for me to get my name out there. I send business cards sometimes with packages in case people want to share where they got their stuff. Marketing by referral. That's a great way to do it. You're gonna trust your friend that what they got is actually cool. And there's a lot of little things too that I try to do, just with like taking nice product photos. I'm not necessarily the best at it, but I try. If you make like your product photos and your listings and everything look more professional, people will assume that what you're making is more professional as well. As for the conventions thing, what do I do to prepare for conventions? I have sold dice at conventions. I know some other dice makers do really great selling dice at conventions. I don't. Most of the things that I sell are my non-dice items. I make a bunch of like raw miscellaneous dice for people to pick through. I make a bunch of keychains and jewelry and those sorts of things. Those tend to sell better for me. I don't know if it's my marketing or just the fact that a set of dice is like $100, whereas a keychain is $5. So I tried to have a broad range of prices on things. I did some small local craft shows first. That's not a bad way to dip your toe in, but if you're gonna go to your first ever convention, it's fine to just bring what you have and then get an idea there from people of what they would like to see in the future. If they're like, oh man, I wish I could get something from you, but I don't have this much money to spend, maybe look at getting some smaller items. If your dice sell really well, then you can focus on the dice, but it doesn't hurt to get some feedback from the people that you're gonna be selling to possibly in the future. And then the platform question. What platform do you have the most success with or reach with dice making and selling? So, I started out on Etsy. I'm no longer on Etsy. I will say that one of the nice things about starting there was that there was the built-in customer base, so I didn't have to try and do a lot of marketing myself. It also helped me build up a customer base. People who bought stuff from me on Etsy have now followed me over to my own website. I think there's pros and cons. The fees have gone up over there. They've done a few things that seem kind of, not shady, but like antithetical to the idea of promoting independent artists. But if you're just starting out, might be something to check out because it does have that built-in user base. Flare Cobra on Discord asked, is there one piece that you could never sell because, well, not perfect, it's got its charm that you just like? I'm assuming this is kind of asking if there's a piece that I really like that I never sold. I think there's a few. I had a few dice sets fairly early on that had really pretty shimmery and glittery effects that were just really hard to show off in photos. So I had a couple of sets of dice there that just never sold, probably just because the photos didn't really do them justice. I actually had a couple of pieces sell recently that I had sitting around for quite a while that I was really proud of. There was this mechanical tray that finally sold, and I just really liked how it turned out. I have a very similar one that's like all sorts of natural things. I think maybe I have it priced a little bit too high or something, but I do still really like how it looks, and I want to make more of them. Star Cobra also asks, what would be the typical shipping costs? So shipping costs depend on whether it is domestic, so I'm in the US, so shipping to other people within the US, or international. Let me find some examples here. Shipping within the US is about $4 to $5, and shipping outside of the US is closer to $20. And that's part of the reason that I ship my Patreon D20s like I do. If you are within the US, I ship them out like every month as I make them, and if you are outside of the US, I ship them every other month. You get the same number of dice, but I try to package things together because it is so much more expensive. Mrs. Jennifer Squires asked, what is the strangest commission request you've had? I mean, I get all sorts of different things. I did have a request at one point to make weighted dice, which I turned down. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't care if you have weighted dice, but I don't want my name tied to them just because of how many comments I get asking, but are they weighted correctly though? And that's something that I think a lot of handmade dice makers deal with, is people asking repeatedly, are they balanced? I made a D20 for someone recently that had their tooth in it, dice that had bones in them. I've done full like mismatched sets based on people's characters or just things that they enjoy. I've done a couple of sets now that have snake skin in them. I made a set that had a bunch of polymer clay hands that I made in it. I did have someone say, hey, I want a set of dice based on this song. Here's the album art. Do what you want. I went and like listened to the song on repeat. Went, okay, how would I translate this to a set of dice? That was a fun one. I had someone recently also ask for a set of dice with ramen in them. I don't know what counts as weird because I do so many different things. So Dirt asked, how do you determine the price of non-dice pieces? And then followed it up with, how do you calculate pricing in general? Not very well. That's something that I find difficult. I never know how to price things. There's a couple of things that I do. I will go online and look around and see what other people are charging for similar things. I'll go on Etsy and look there. I will go on websites of other dice makers and resin creators and see what they're charging for similar things. I will try to figure out about how much time it took me. I found that materials don't really cost too much, like on a set of dice, but it still takes about 3 hours to make a set of dice, and I don't want to just charge minimum wage, so I'll do some math there. Something I realized is that I can't just charge for my time of making a set of dice. I have to charge a little bit more than that. The time that I take to make the set of dice, that is basically, you know, what's going towards my bills and my personal funds. But there's a lot of business costs that go into things too. There's all of the time sitting at conventions and, you know, convention fees and travel fees, and the time it takes to make molds and the time it takes to ship things. There's just a lot of other stuff that goes on that I need to be able to make the money to support, and I have to make that money back somehow along with whatever time it takes me to make stuff. But yeah, what I think it really comes down to is just checking out what the market's like, what are other people selling and buying dice for, and how much time and materials are you putting into the thing, and then make sure to add a little bit on top of that to cover other business expenses as well. Maddie G on Discord asked, from a business perspective, have you set up an LLC or anything like that for Alchemist Attic? And if so, at what point did it become necessary? So I have a sole proprietorship, which was pretty easy to set up. I actually already had one. I probably didn't need one, but before I did resin stuff, I made soap and I sold it at just a single holiday bazaar once a year. I just was making soap for fun, and then I ended up with a ton of soap. But since I was selling things, I decided it would be a good idea to get a business license, just in case. So that was actually under a different name. I've since changed the name on that. So when I decided to do the resin stuff, I just renewed that business license. At least where I live, there are certain laws about whether something is a hobby or something is a business. And since I'm running this like a business, my goal is to, you know, do this full time and to actually make a profit as opposed to just making back the costs. I need a business license to do that. And then Maddie G also asked, what's your favorite D&D race and class? Is there anything you'd really like to play that you haven't yet? And favorite tabletop role-playing game systems. Favorite D&D race and class. I don't know if I have a favorite. When I was growing up, I used to play D&D with my family, and I'd always play like an elf ranger. That was back in like 2nd edition though. I think now I've had a lot of fun playing a lot of different things. I think rogue's really fun. I think cleric's surprisingly fun. I'd like a chance to play a warlock for, you know, an extended period of time because I think that'd be really fun. And then favorite tabletop role-playing game systems. I haven't played a lot of them. I've pretty much only played Pathfinder and D&D. So I'm just gonna go with the classical D&D because that's what I grew up with. Jen on Discord asked, if you must pick one of your cats to be your favorite, which would it be? First of all, I want to say that I am offended that you would make me choose between my children. How dare you? All of my cats are wonderful and perfect. Fitz is like the most energetic and friendly cat that I've ever had, and Knott's just a love bug and wants cuddles all the time. And Koshi's just a sweetheart who likes to like check in on everybody and make sure that they're okay. And Luna loves to like hang out and like talk with you. And it's so offensive that you would ask me to like choose between my children, but also it's Koshi. Jen also asks, what's your favorite thing to work on? Doesn't have to be dice related. And least favorite. So I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but my favorite medium to work in is painting. I really enjoy painting. I want to do more of it. I think part of the reason though that my favorite medium is painting is that it's not my job. I do really enjoy the resin stuff, but I've always loved painting. It's just easy to get into the flow and like go and work on it. Least favorite? Maybe doing the dishes? No, let's see. Sticking in like the resin side of things, I think my least favorite is making molds. I really don't enjoy making the silicone molds. I think it's just because there's so many different steps that like I can't just turn my brain off and work on it. I have to be like focused on it, but it's still repetitive enough that it's kind of boring. So it's just like in that weird in-between space where I have to focus on it, but also it's really boring to focus on it. The last question here from Jen is, do you often feel restricted in your creativity because you're running a business / have a full-time job, or is it the opposite? I do want to say that I don't actually have a full-time job. I have a part-time job, which does take up some of my time. I'm actually gonna go head out to that right after filming this. Do I feel restricted in my creativity? Yes, I would say yes, because both the aspect of running a business and also of having a part-time job, those both take up a lot of time that I could be using to work on other things or relax and recharge and, you know, let the creativity juices flow. I think also there is a certain amount of, since I'm running a business, I need to focus on things that are going to hopefully make money. I try to plan things out so that I am consistent and, you know, I'm making sets of dice, I'm getting videos made and put out somewhat consistently. I haven't been very good about that recently, but we'll ignore that. But I think that that's good for me. I think that if I didn't have some sort of schedule or feeling like there's some sort of responsibility there, that I wouldn't actually get anything done. So I think that having that restriction has forced me to become a lot more effective with my time and to actually think about what it is that I want to get done and plan for it. But it would be nice to have that time to work on other projects. All right, I think that's all of the questions that I got. Thank you to the folks who submitted them. Hopefully you enjoyed this little Q&A video. Feel free to leave questions down in the comments. I'm happy to answer your questions via typing. I do want to go ahead and thank my patrons for supporting all of these videos. I do really appreciate it. If you want to join that group of folks, there is a link to that in the description. You know what? Maybe I should ask you guys a question. I'm gonna ask you guys a question and you can put your answer down in the comments. If you were a D&D character or other tabletop gaming character, what race and class would you be? I'd probably be a gnome bard. I will talk to you guys again soon. I've got another video I'm working on. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!